What's going on, folks? Welcome to a live episode of Locked On Bengals. We will be recording our podcast in front of you in minutes. And everyone that's here already knows who we are. Jake Liscow, James Rapien. I will be repeating that intro shortly because we will be recording our podcast that will go up on all of the audio platforms as well. That will be slightly edited. So just so everybody knows, when we're doing the podcast, it'll be the first time we're doing a live show here. So that means we're going to do our podcast as normal. We will not be interacting a ton with the chat while we're doing that part of the show. And then we'll wrap that up. We'll have a chance to interact with the chat a little bit. So just know that while we're doing the 25 to 30 minutes we're about to do here, we will be doing a podcast. You're just going to watch us do it live. We'll have a chance to talk with you guys and gals that are in the audience, interacting in chat a little bit afterward here.
Yeah. After you celebrate. Happy Sunday night, early Monday morning. It's Monday morning now. It's still Sunday night where Jake Liscow lives because he lives way west. Regardless, it's a holiday. And no, I'm not talking about St. Patrick's Day, even though Jamar, Chase, and Tee Higgins have a lot of green right now. See what I did there? Big day for all involved. I'm glad, Jake, that it didn't keep the people waiting. They were getting on edge a bit about these deals that we knew were done.
Yeah,
that we talked about. They weren't. They were kind of annoyed. Like there were a lot of people on social media frustrated with. We put out a show Sunday afternoon, and you might not have seen it yet if you're joining us live, and that's fine. A lot of it's still relevant. You could check it out after this one. But people were like, "Don't count your eggs before they're hatched. Don't count your chickens. Don't." Like it was just so. There were so many like, "Oh my gosh, something could go wrong," and there was nothing that was going to go wrong because it was done. That was never a question. And these things take a little time to finalize, but done is done. And in official, well, it's not going to be official till they sign. And guess what? They still haven't signed yet. They'll sign when the Bengals announce it. They cannot do that yet because they haven't signed. But it's been done now for quite some time, which means it's time to celebrate, Bengals fans.
And the last thing I'll say before we get started, agree with that. The last thing I'll say before we get started on the show here is, as is tradition, they caught us with our pants down, James. The big move happened when we both finally relaxed, weren't looking at our phones. I was walking home with this kimchi fried rice that I was just sitting here waiting for me to eat it. And so I'm going to have my 10 o'clock p.m. dinner here by the time we're done with this show. And
I was watching a documentary.
Yeah?
Wife and I were watching a documentary.
Was it about?
And I turned my phone around and set it down because it was like past 10 o'clock. I'm like, whatever. Like, and it's one of those things where, of course, that's when it happens. I got to it like 4 minutes late. You beat me. I got to it like 4 minutes late. And I'm like, oh, the terms are announced because as we know, we reported it the Saturday at 4 p.m. We covered it here on Locked On Bengals today at length, and it's been a really watched episode here on YouTube and listened to a significant amount on a Sunday. So we appreciate you for that. But I think it's podcast time, Jake. You guys get to see us. This is how we do it. We always usually do one take anyway. Mm-hmm. We're about to do this thing one take, ads and all, and then stick around. We'll answer some questions afterwards and hang out and make sure that Jake has to put off eating his dinner as long as possible. That'll be my goal.
That's right. Maybe if you're real lucky, like Bob Stead says in the chat, I'll eat it on camera. Probably not. But just a reminder for everybody here, because about 400 more people have showed up since I made this disclaimer at the top of the live. We will be doing our show straight through. Can't see the chat while we're doing the show. We'll get ads like normal. You're going to have to bear with the ads here because you're watching a live. You got to still do those. And then afterward, we will finish the podcast portion. Hopefully we'll have a chance to interact with the chat for a little bit toward the end here. You're going to see, all of the normal, out screen that you normally see. Stick around after that if you're on YouTube, because we will be back and chat with you for a little bit after that. But James, let's leave a little bit of air here. And I'll come up with a cold open because we don't have a pause button here. And then we'll start hitting buttons and doing the show.
Look at you. Look at you. Jake Liscow is coming up with a cold open right now. I'll fill the gaps.
No, I
until
got to
we
think.
count down.
You
You can't think right now. What
No.
are you gonna? I mean, what are you gonna say? Are you?
Hang on. Keep talking. Now it's fine. Now I can't hear you.
Oh, there you go. It's going to be about Jamar, Chase, and Tee Higgins. What's he got to think about? I mean, can you believe this guy has to think about the cold open? Jamar, Chase, and Tee Higgins have signed or are signing 4-year extensions. We'll talk about it next. Boom. That's all he's got to do for the cold open, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we're going to leave 3 seconds, and Jake is going to go into the cold open he thought really long and hard about.
The deals are done, and importantly, they come with guarantees that make this unprecedented times for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien, and we are Locked On Bengals on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're not an everyday already, now is a great time to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit the bell on YouTube, hit the follow button wherever you get your podcast, and you won't miss an episode, as we'll have you covered here with our bonus episode this time, because the Bengals got the deals done with Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. A very exciting day for all Bengals fans out there. And yes, there are still some questions. We'll get to those later. First, we got to talk about the momentous news of the day, which is that the deals are done and there's an extra year compared to what I expected, James, for Tee Higgins tacked on, and there are guarantees beyond year one. There are a lot of things about this, James, that is a unique scenario for the Cincinnati Bengals and a great day for the Bengals to keep their identity together.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. It's huge news. It's huge to see the Bengals break precedent in a few different ways. There are a lot of layers to this. And I will say this. I would say for the majority of Tee Higgins' Bengals tenure, it didn't feel like he would get the second contract in Cincinnati. And whether it was Jamar, whether it was his agent, and by Jamar, I mean just having such an elite wide receiver on the roster. Like, you knew the Bengals were paying Jamar like 6 games into his rookie contract. You're like, oh, well, yeah, he's going to be here for a long time. And with T, it was like, oh, well, can they keep them together? And that was a conversation years ago. I mean, year 2 and year 3 of Tee Higgins, where it's like, all right, well, what are they going to do? And then you had everything play out the way it did. And for it to end up here now, where it's Joe, it's Jamar, it's T. Jamar's under contract for the next 5 years, Tee Higgins the next 4 years. You have this trio together for the next at least 4 years. For the rest of, I would say, their prime. It's a hell of a day. It's a hell of a night for the Cincinnati Bengals. And obviously other moves need to be made. But when it comes to championship level teams, you have to pick your core. And when you're starting out with Joe, Jamar, and T, that's a hell of a core. That's better than most top 3 on any team. And so if you're starting there, you have a shot in any game, in any matchup, on any field. You know that with these guys. And so to keep them, I want to hammer this home, because I think that there's going to be a lot of national press, a lot of opinions, both good and bad about this Bengals-wise. And it's very, very clear here. If the Bengals were going to get back to a Super Bowl, the most realistic path was to do this, was to keep Jamar and to keep Tee Higgins long term. So for them to get both of those deals done, it's a big night, big move for the franchise and for these receivers.
Yeah, like I said on the show we recorded earlier today and a few minutes ago, it keeps their identity together. Their identity is a passing offense anchored on the talents of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tee Higgins, and that's how they're winning football games. That is the engine for this football team. Do there need to be complementary pieces? Yeah, and like you said, people are going to be critical about team building, and we're going to have to talk about it in coming days and try to be really objective about the way the Bengals are doing it. But you can only do what's available to you in the moment. And a lot of the criticisms of the Bengals that you're going to see are going to be about what they should have done last year. or 2 years ago. And while those are valid, don't get me wrong, they could not do those things now. They are not inventing a time machine and going back to right wrongs in the past. So what they could do now to keep the best team together that they could put on the field, keep their quarterback as happy as he can be, maintain their culture, starts with these moves and starts with maintaining that identity that has gotten them into deep playoff runs in the past when they've had the pieces around them. And then putting the pieces around them is what remains to be done. We haven't even talked about much of the specific financials in these deals either, James, which both have fascinating and unprecedented for the Bengals aspects to them, and both have some record-setting numbers for wide receivers involved, depending on the way you frame it. But at its core, from a football perspective, and we talked about this earlier, this offense is driven by having a great quarterback and 2 great wide receivers. Some of the best receivers that have ever played for the Bengals, probably going to end up being the best receiver that ever played for the Bengals in Jamar Chase. And James, I know you have your thoughts about where Tee Higgins ranks in this conversation as well, but that is what drives this team. That is what's driven this team for the last few years. And keeping that together gives you your identity to build around for this 4-year window that now exists, 5 years with Jamar Chase, but this window that exists around that offensive core.
Yeah, it's what they are. Like a lot of people are like, it doesn't matter what offensive lineman they add. They could add Anthony Munoz in his prime and Max Montoya in his prime and insert whoever. They're going to throw the ball. They're going to throw the ball all over the damn field. And that's what they do. And so if they're going to be that, and Joe's going to find completions, his words, not mine. Do you not want the 6'4", 225-pounder that's gotten better every single year and by far, I think by far looked the best of his career this year? And in training camp, just looked like a freaking stud. And I get it. He had those 2 soft tissue injuries that limited him. He still played in 12 games this year, had a career high 10 touchdowns, was really moving the chains. It felt like every pass T caught was getting a first down or a touchdown. Like it just felt like there were big play after big play over the middle, physical stuff. It improved on his yak. Joe Burrow talked about his pop-up game, how he'd pop up after these catches. It's because he's bigger, stronger, and in his grown man body now versus young T from a few years ago. I think that this was the path to them winning, and it doesn't have to look like some of these other teams. They have to do other things, but this is one of those first steps that needed to happen. And a lot of people, we're going to get into the financials in just a second. A lot of people look at the Bengals and say, man, they should have got these done sooner. And I agree with you. I would have paid T sooner. I certainly would have tried to get Jamar done last year. But I will say this, Justin Jefferson got his deal after year 4, and he didn't get it until like June. So that was last June. Jamar got his deal after year 4 in March. It's not that off. It would have been unprecedented to get Jamar done as early as they almost did last year. I wish they would have, because it would have been such a better deal. But at the same time, I get it. They waited, and it's kind of good for Jamar because he cashed in. We got to talk about the particulars, though, for Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and the precedent that the Bengals broke for both guys. We will do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Well, Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase aren't going to have that problem. But between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money can come in. It's your personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop managing your money. Start building wealth with Monarch Money. And the best part, at least one of the best parts about it is easy to collaborate. You could take all of these financial apps that you have and boom, move them, consolidate them into one app with Monarch Money. And you can manage all of your money with your partner. It's smoother than ever. You can set goals, stay on the same page without all the stress that comes with it. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
This episode of Locked On Bengals is also sponsored by FanDuel. And with March Madness here, the brackets are out, and well, FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before, because new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 that you can use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. And with so much going on during March Madness, there's something for you to get in on almost every day. It's easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. And maybe March Madness somehow isn't your thing, and you just want to stick to the Bengals. Well, you can take a look at Joe Burrow's MVP odds and see how they've been impacted by the solidified return of Jamar, Chase, and Tee Higgins for the next 4 years or 5 years as well. You can check it all out at FanDuel.com to get in on all the college hoops action all tournament long.
All right, Jake, let's start with Jamar. Highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. We knew it would get there. I think we all knew. Anything surprise you about the 161?
Nothing is surprising to me about the Jamar Chase deal from a financial perspective. I think that it could have been 164 very easily. It just barely jumps over Myles Garrett by 0.25 million instead of $1 full million, which is interesting. 112 million guaranteed, which is not a number I was sure the Bengals would get to for him, but they get there. It beats Justin Jefferson by a lot in the overall money category, of course, and in the guaranteed money category as well. And as is pointed out by others as well on social media, Jamar Chase's contract now runs for the next 5 years. So he was under contract for 2025 already. A 4-year extension on top of that goes to a 5-year total. And for those 5 total years, it's $182.8 million over those 5 years, including the 5th-year option that he was due in 2025. So that works out to be in the mid-30s over 5 years for Jamar Chase. That's the benefit you get in getting those extensions done early. So just to give the full breakdown there, that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. That's a lot of money for Jamar Chase. They will have to figure out what the structure looks like. They figured that out. We'll have to figure that out and see what it looks like, see what that tells us about their intent to spend additional money this year, their intent to manage the cap hits in future years, fully expecting some option bonuses here so that Jamar Chase has another big payday coming next year, and prorating that cap hit out into the future. The other thing that I wasn't so sure about, and we'll see what exactly this will look like, but Jordan Schultz also indicating in another tweet late on Sunday that both cap numbers are expected to decrease. And I wasn't so sure, James, that Jamar Chase's number would decrease, and I'm not sure how substantial it would be. I was pretty confident about it for T with the franchise tag number at 26 point something million, but I wasn't so sure about Jamar's, because looking at Joe Burrow's deal, they didn't reduce his year 5, his 5th-year option cap hit when they did that extension, but they apparently are doing it for Chase. We'll see to what degree, but if they are reducing those cap hits this year, we still need details there, and we'll talk about T's contract as well. That will tell us about their intent for the rest of free agency as well.
Yeah, I think, there's a big difference, and that's why the timing of these is so important. I mentioned getting Jamar's done in March and not June. Well, yeah, now you want the cap hit to go down. Joe's was in September. Who cares if it doesn't go down? It was already done. Like the season was starting.
It was for the following year too, because they got Joe done a year earlier than Jamar. Yeah,
sure. In that's, but there's so much time to forecast that, and you're talking quarterback. Anyways, the point is like now is the time to do it, to shrink these down as much as you can, or at least to a degree, so you can use that money elsewhere. And hopefully that's why there was so much inactivity. Is they're like, look, there's some good players that we want, but we're focused on getting these guys done. They said that they could do the parallel paths thing. I also think that it takes time to get both of these deals done. They're 2 substantial deals. And so now they need to hit the ground running and continue to add to their roster. And by doing it now, because 5-6 days ago, there were people, and this can be like the last thing on Jamar, and then we can get to the financials and stuff on T. But there were people that were like, Jamar's just going to wait out Micah. And that was just clearly not the case. He was not worried about waiting out Micah. I think it was the other way. I think this was making sure that T was taken care of. And the fact that it was really, it's a big layer of this, is Rocky Arsenault being the agent for both of these guys, and T. Higgins switching agents, and how that opened up the door for this to be possible. And then I think we're both under the impression that Jamar was close around the combine. Like they had exchanged numbers, things were getting there. And it sounds like Rocky was like, before we get Jamar done, we're focused on T.
Yeah.
And kind of use that to prioritize T to get both of these done now, which does help the Bengals, because you do not want that cap hit at $26.179 million for T. Higgins. And to get that done now, they did a couple of things. One, they were able to get a 4th year with T, but they did something that I'm not sure anyone expected them to have to do, which is give that second year. That second year is guaranteed of this deal. His age 27 season in 2026 is going to be guaranteed now.
And you point out that move that Arsenault made, and that's straight up reported on by Ari Meirov at this point. I think we can consider that to be fact. I mean, Meirov tweeted over an hour ago now, as we're recording this past midnight Eastern time, that Arsenault told the team no Jamar deal without T. And so, one, that's clever from the agent's perspective, but two, I think that it tells you about what these guys' relationship is about. And as we get into the details here, the financial details for T. Higgins, I think that T. Higgins, I mean, he's already a fan favorite, but this is putting your money where your mouth is, if you're T, to stay in the situation he's in with the Cincinnati Bengals. And you do not see that kind of loyalty from players. Yes, he got paid. Don't get me wrong. He would have gotten paid more on the open market if he had made this very difficult. If he would have stayed with David Mulligetta, he could have made more money. And so what the deal looks like now for T is 4 years, $115 million. So not only did he change agents and strategize with his teammates on the team to make sure that he got a deal to stay in Cincinnati, he also gave them a 4th year. And I think that's probably in exchange for that 2nd year guaranteed. So this is now the 3rd player, in addition to Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, that the Bengals have given guarantees to outside of year 1 in recent years. And the 2nd non-quarterback, in addition to Jamar Chase, to get guaranteed money from the Bengals outside of year 1. And that $115 million over 4 years is just south of $29 million per year for T. Higgins, who was expected on the open market to be over 30. I think across the board, that would have been the expectation. And there are incentives in that contract for T to get to $30 million per year if he does hit all of those incentives. Now, we don't know what those incentives are yet. We haven't seen the structure of the contracts or anything like that. But the things that I wanted to underline here are, one, the clear desire from T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow to continue to play together in Cincinnati. And two, the Bengals' willingness to play ball here and put guarantees outside of year 1, especially for T. I thought they would have to do it for Jamar. I think we all did. But doing it for T. Higgins as well shows a bit of an evolution for this team that is very noteworthy and will be noteworthy when we look back on it when we're talking about future free agent negotiations for the Bengals.
Yeah, hopefully it's the start of something unprecedented for the Bengals that not only is now precedented, but is just part of what they do. And it's, if you have a really high-end young player, or you want to swim in that free agent pool, you're willing to give guarantees in year 2, because that opens up a whole nother level of keeping the Jesse Bateses of the world, of keeping guys like that you draft, develop, and hope become stars. Like, you're hoping Amarius Mims becomes the best right tackle in the league. Well, guess what that means when you go to extend him? That you're paying him guaranteed money in year 2, which would be a great problem to have. And so hopefully that's it. Good for T. By the way, if I'm the Bengals, I would much rather have T for 4 years than 3 years if it means guaranteeing another year. Absolutely. 4 years is way bigger than 3 years with just guarantees in year 1. It's well worth the trade-off there for the Cincinnati Bengals. We have more to discuss. We have to get into, just a huge, huge night for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll continue the conversation coming up next.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
James, as we talk about the future for this team now, I think a lot of people are thinking about what's next. I think a lot of people are thinking about the roster construction questions. Before we get there, any final thoughts here on the financials, on what we've done and seen from the Bengals in a precedent-breaking way? The Tee Higgins clear willing himself to stay in Cincinnati. Anything else on those guys before we talk a little bit about what's next and some hints that potentially Trey Hendrickson is next for the Bengals to deal with?
Yeah, I think all of these guys just deserve a ton of credit. I mean, Joe pushing publicly and making it very clear. So much so that you have Duke Tobin coming out at the combine. Like, I agree with everything Joe said. He literally said that. Everything our quarterback says, I agree with. And so that, one, flexing his muscle. Two, Tee Higgins making, I think, a wise decision to say, hey, I'm going to stay and I'm happy in Cincinnati and I love playing with Joe and Jamar and I think we can win a title. And instead of going this other route, which, by the way, if the Bengals would have tagged Tee a second time with David Mulligetta, it would not have been as pretty and it would have been much uglier. And I know Tee didn't necessarily want to get tagged. I get that. But all of that was part of getting to tonight. And it was part of the process. And even then, Jamar being selfless enough to say, hey, don't take care of me, handle Tee. Like there's a lot that goes into that because he was this close to getting a deal done last year. And then to say, let's push this off a little bit and make sure that Tee's taken care of. It's just, it shows how tight these guys are. And that's just a hell of a trio to push forward with in their prime. Joe's 28, Jamar's 25, Tee's 26. Love rolling with that. And I'm not sure anyone's as happy, honestly. I haven't said this. I didn't say this on the Cincinnati Bengals Talk live stream. I just thought about it now. Zach Taylor might be the happiest man on the planet tonight.
Mm-hmm.
He might be that. He doesn't have to answer Jamar Chase training camp questions, Tee Higgins stuff during OTAs. Plus, every game plan he puts together, he's going to have Joe, Jamar, and Tee. That's a fun spot to be in.
Yeah, hopefully he's not answering any other questions related to player attendance during any of these programs as the Bengals have their biggest contracts they had to deal with done now. And as I mentioned earlier, the potential for these cap hits to go down could spell more action for the Bengals in free agency, could spell the Bengals returning to the table with Trey Hendrickson. And let's wrap up there with what's next, as Tom Pelissero's tweet about Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins deal included the words, next up, trying to work out a deal with Trey Hendrickson. The sides have been in contact recently. That does line up with what Tom Pelissero said in his most recent report about the Bengals being back in contact with Trey's representation in recent days. We'll see if that moves. We'll see if this is the cork that needed to come out of the bottle before things can move with Trey Hendrickson. But that those sides have been in contact recently, that the priority, according to Pelissero, is working out a deal with Hendrickson could mean that all of Joe Burrow's checklist is done. And then we got to think about the guard position at the very least as well. And we talked about that on the other show we did earlier on Sunday, James. But there are other things for the Bengals to do here. But as Jordan Schultz reported, if these cap hits are indeed going down, as he suggested, that does spell more activity coming for the Bengals in this free agency period that's been unusually quiet for the last few days.
Yeah, they need to get moving and add to this roster. There's no doubt. I think the Trey thing is going to come. I know he wants to be in Cincinnati, like deep down wants to be in Cincinnati, but I don't know how far apart they are money wise. And so now are these structured in a way? Is the cap hit in a way? Because Trey's cap hit will go up. If he gets more money, his cap hit's going to go up. So maybe that's what they were waiting on, is like, hey, we want to handle Trey. We also want to hopefully sign, I'll throw out a name, Brandon Scherf. I know Tevin Jenkins is visiting Seattle today now, Monday. We'll see. I don't think they're going after Tevin anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they get that done now because everything else is sorted out. But you have to address the guard spot. And it would be really nice to get this resolved with Trey and do it in a way where he's happy, he feels respected, but you also have the flexibility to continue to add. Because let's be honest here, if they had one guard, they'd certainly be better off adding two guards, because the one is replacing Kappa, which you need to. And the other one, as of now, is either Cordell Volson, who you benched for Cody Ford, or Cody Ford, who was a backup for Cordell Volson for most of last season. And I like Ford and his versatility and playing multiple spots, but I don't think anyone views him as a legitimate starter. And so do you want to put that much pressure on a rookie? I don't. So I would prefer two veteran options, even if one is competing with Ford for that starting job, a Ford and a rookie for that starting job. So we'll see what they do there. Obviously, pass rush, you can't have enough of it. Ideally, they add a guard and then another guard and then another pass rusher after getting Trey done. That's an ideal world, not necessarily what they're going to do. But either way, I think it does give them some clarity in that Trey is going to be the next domino here that they really focus on outside of the guard spot.
Yeah, that's why the cap hits will be so fascinating for Jamar and Tee if we do get a look at some of the structure for those deals anytime soon and have a better idea of what that impact will be. That will tell us a lot about what the Bengals' plans are. And that's why we pay attention to those things so closely. That's why that is interesting, because they do still have a lot of work to do, ideally. And maybe more than ideally. Maybe there's a different word you could use there. They should be doing more work to improve the roster instead of just paying more for the same team, like Duke Tobin said. And that was going to be necessary to some degree. Joe Burrow's cap hit was going up. You were going to be paying more cash to Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins to get these deals done. That's fine. But you can find additional pieces, and you can do all of it. And that's why the cap hit piece is so interesting. We could see the biggest cash over cap year in Bengals history now with these two deals done, in addition to what they already have on the books for this season. And that would be a fascinating aspect of this too, after we saw them treat the Trey Hendrickson negotiation in such a way that he ended up getting that opportunity to explore his trade market. So I do think that'll be really interesting. James, I have one last question for you here before we wrap up the podcast. Yeah. With the Bengals having number one, number two wide receivers locked up for 4 years, how sad are you that they won't be drafting a wide receiver in the first round for probably at least 2 years?
Well, I actually always I could still see them drafting a receiver this year. It wouldn't shock me.
First round,
but first round, yeah. I'm not bummed by that. I'm excited by that. You know why? Because I get to watch Jamar and Tee. That's the other element here. It's actually great. I get what you were doing, and you weren't expecting this.
I'm doing a joke, okay? I'm doing a bit.
No doubt. But here's, in all seriousness, all these bleepity bleepers out there are going to say that wide receivers grow on trees, and there is literally zero guarantee that any wide receiver in this draft class will be as good as Tee Higgins. Maybe, but it may take them 3 years. Not every wide receivers don't grow on trees like Tee. And that's why he would have made $35 million in the open market if he had got there this year, because the Patriots would have given up. They would have sold their soul to Roger Goodell to get Tee Higgins on their roster this year. They really would have. They called Roger and told him that. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful place to be in. I still think that they'll always be in the wide receiver market. You can never have enough of them if you're the Bengals in a pass first team. But first round, I agree with you. And that's a great place to be. By the way, just a quick note, audio listeners, don't worry about this. But if you are on our live stream, we're about to end the pod, but we're going to hang around and answer some of your questions. So don't go anywhere.
Yeah, for those listeners, we're doing our first live show here. I love that in that analogy, James, Roger Goodell is the devil that is making a deal for someone's soul. And the Patriots are somehow not after the scandals around the Patriots. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Deals done for Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase. We'll have more to talk about as far as what's next for this team as they try to get the rest of the roster into championship shape for 2025. And we'll have plenty of time to do that in the coming days here on Locked On Bengals. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hooday, and have a good one.
Well. You guys just witnessed the first live Locked On Bengals on YouTube. Any first impressions? Any first impressions there in the chat? No, but get your questions in. We were not looking at the chat at all up until now, but if you have questions, certainly ask them. Jake,
I did have it
what
on my
what a wild night.
I did have it on my other screen over there.
Oh,
And
did you?
I was
Nice.
keeping a little bit of an eye on it, and trying not to react to it because there's always some trolls, right? And despite our,
you and the troll, you'll get used to it, man.
I mean, I am used to it. I'm much better at ignoring them now than I used to be. I was going to say that despite how much we are very online and how much we have an online presence here, and I read the comments from time to time. Sometimes the trolls say things that get your attention, at least a little bit. Appreciate whoever it was that said, man, the chat does move fast. Andrew wasn't lying. Wildcats Mike, the textbook cold open. Appreciate that. All of you that are asking for my shirt to come off, I'm sorry. That's much more likely to happen on James's channel than this channel, which has corporate sponsors that allow us to do this every day.
Oh, you're saying I'm never mind. I'm not even going to go down that road. Okay.
Yeah.
Much more likely. Still can't believe it, Steve. I reported it like 34 hours ago now.
I want to know if anybody in the chat right now were one of the people that responded to the tweet when we put the show up on Twitter and said that it was fake news clickbait. Sorry, I'm engaging the trolls. I'm engaging the trolls too much. Let's see if there are any questions in here for us to get to. We'll take a couple of them and then we'll get out of here.
I'll be real. I definitely kept track a little bit today. Because there were a lot of people that were like, man, is James this? Is James? And I was just like, all right. I'm like, I get it. Like, I get it. Yeah. Like, I'm not, and I didn't respond to any of them. But when the news was announced, I just, I had this picture of Luka looking at Devin Booker from earlier today.
Yeah.
And it's just like he's smiling at him and Devin Booker's looking straight forward. And I just used that. And that was my way. I quote tweeted the news yesterday because there were a lot of people that clearly were like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And
even in our subtext, and for those of you that have heard us talk about it before, the Locked On Bengals Insider Group, join subtext.com/LockedOnBengals, who got texts from us on Friday when all the Nationals had it. I added what I was hearing in addition, which was a phone call and a message that really corroborated what we were hearing on Friday and lines up with Tom Pelissero's tweet today that these were actually done on Friday. And then Saturday, James did a story. We did a subtext that was like, yeah, these deals are done. It's crossing I's and dotting T's at this point. And then Sunday night, we talked about this a little bit over on your channel, James, but the timing of this could be very agent driven and is very agent driven, right? Like this came from the agents that the players obviously agreed to it. They were on social media. They tweeted out their emojis when the news came out. And I think T did beat, am I wrong on this? Did T do the first handshake? Did he beat the reporters on it?
Did he beat Schultz?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he
Schultz
did.
had it at 10:53.
Okay.
I'm checking T now. T had it at 10:54. So yeah, he did.
He didn't beat him. This is a minute later.
Like okay. Schultz beat him. Yeah.
Yeah, Schultz beat him. So the I forget what point I was going to make. Good thing we're doing it live and not just recording a podcast here.
You're talking about timing. You're talking about yesterday, subtext, all that stuff. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Let's move on.
The news breaking. You and your rice. I don't know.
I do want to eat my rice. I was talking about the insider group. I think that's all.
Oh yeah. Subtext not believing.
Oh yeah. So yeah, people even in there were like, "You guys, I'm getting nervous." And those people are the people that trust us the most, right? Because they're subscribed to this insider group, which is an extra way to talk to us. And those are the people that are most engaged with us. And Strawberry Ice, surprising that I wasn't on a date when this happened. So a couple things. One, I'm supposed to have this video chat tonight still. And that's what I was talking about timing wise, James. Like, it's not great for me if we go later. And two, I haven't had my dinner yet. And so that's what they're inconveniencing me with tonight. So there's a date involved, sort of.
Yeah, with the video chat. So I had this in my back pocket because I was thinking like, all right, so what do I like? Let's say it gets into Monday and we have to do another show. Because like today was, it took a couple days for Joe Burrow's deal, even after it was announced, for them to actually sign it and get it finalized. Like they're doing a lot of this behind the scenes now. And so like logical example of how it is, even though we knew it was done. And I was thinking, I was like, man, am I going to have to bring up the fact that I reported T Higgins was going to get tagged like 3 weeks before he was tagged? Like it really was. I reported on like February 16th or 17th and he didn't get tagged till the Monday before the deadline.
The day before the last day. Yeah. And we did an episode on it. I remember that.
And it's like sometimes like I get that's different. They made the decision to do that and that's different. But like, just because something's done doesn't mean it's officially done. Like they knew they were going to have to tag him. T knew it was coming and it was going to happen. And it did happen. Shocker. And so I was like, man, I guess I'll bring that up. Like, just in case, like if we have to go one more day. And it, like, even in subtext today, I was like, I think they'll sign him this week, but you don't want people. The last thing I want to do is stress people out. Like something's wrong. It's like, nothing's wrong. It just takes time. Like this stuff is done. It's over in a good way.
Yep.
You know? So
anyways,
we got to get the questions. We're just
a couple questions here we can hit. First, I just want to talk about this one. You can send us texts. We will be able to see them. We currently have, let me look, 45 unread messages to reply to on the Locked On Bengals Insider page, and we'll be going through those probably while I eat my rice here.
You can join our subtext. I'm putting the comment in the chat right now of how to join. That's how you join our subtext. You can join for free.
And that link is in the description of every episode as well, in case you're looking at this some other time and not looking at the chat. Next question here is Trey Brown involved in negotiations, is getting GM feels out there. I would be surprised. I think this was all Katie Blackburn for these two particular contracts. Trey Brown might negotiate lower level deals, but I think that's mostly Duke Tobin and maybe Steve Radicevich.
Yeah, I think it's these were Katie and Troy, to be very clear on who was handling these.
Yeah.
So
odds, we have a photo op of T and Jamar signing together. I think pretty damn high.
100.
100.
100. They're not doing it now. Like, and I don't know that. Like, I don't have an email like with a press conference time or anything that I'm aware of, at least.
Yeah.
But I would be stunned if they didn't do these together, considering they literally got done together.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked.
Same agent and everything. Brett G. So the news broke when you were out of the house. So we talked about this before we started the podcast part of the live stream, but I was walking home with my dinner, not looking at Twitter. And I got a text, shout out Andre Parada for the text, like sending me the tweet from Jordan Schultz. And I was like, oh, is this actual? Is this going to be everybody reporting it? And then I got home and we got on James's channel for a little bit before we came over to Locked On Bengals. And James, you mentioned this before we started. You were watching a documentary.
Yep. Watching a documentary, hanging out. Just had finished a piece of cheesecake. And then I had my phone flipped over. I've had it flip. My screen time has been ridiculously high. Like even higher. My screen time sucks in general compared to the average person, but I've been like all about my phone and like staring at, because you just don't want to miss anything. And I was like, let's put it down, and looked at it. And of course, 4 minutes had passed. Like 4 minutes ago, T and Jamar, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, I know I'm late to news when I go to our subtext to send something out to people, and there's already messages there. I think I might have beaten them this time just because it was so late when the news broke. But another question here, where are we on cap space now? We don't know quite yet, but the reports are that the cap numbers have gone down for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, according to Jordan Schultz. And he might also be speculating. I didn't get the feel that was necessarily 100% a solid thing. I couldn't quite tell, but it's also 100% possible that those cap hits both do go down. I would expect more for T than Jamar, but we will certainly see on that one. Will J, let me see if we can figure out this question here. The ideal scenario you would like to see pre-draft. So I think this is ideal scenario for the rest of free agency.
Oh, well, ideal scenario for rest of free agency would be honest, it would still be Tevin Jenkins and Brandon Scherf for me. I don't think that Tevin is kind of realistic because he might already be in Seattle or flying to Seattle in a few hours. Who knows? He's got a Monday visit, so it's probably he could fly later in the day and save a couple hours. But regardless, it would be like 2 guards and a pass rusher.
Yeah,
and that doesn't include Trey, who obviously you got to get done. In my head, I really do think it's trending in that Trey gets done. Maybe I'm wrong. If they haven't pulled the trigger on a trade now, the only way that they trade him is if someone really ups their offer. They're not going to feel worse about Trey 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And lower the cost.
Next question here is Trey's asking price. So great segue here. Probably low 30s is where we think this is.
Yeah. And honestly, I wonder, we've talked about this. Like, would they just wait him out a little bit? Like, and just offer him 2 for $28. That's where I was at the combine before the Micah deal and in the Myles Garrett deal or the Max Crosby deal and the Myles Garrett deal is like 2 for 56. And if they're there, they may just stay there and say, Trey, like, and give him some incentives to get to 30. Like maybe that's what he fights for. But I do wonder like what his minimum is. If they're offering him 2 for 56 though, he might want to consider it because I'm not sure how much pushback and how much leverage he actually has if he couldn't find a trade partner that's going to give up the price that the Bengals are willing to take.
Yep. Let's do a couple more questions. There's one guy that really wanted to see you go live on Cincinnati Bengals Talk instead, James. I guess he missed that we did that already, but he keeps bringing it up. Christine wants to know if there's a holdup with the Oren Burke signing. Everyone else has had their press conference and photo already. Did that deal fall through, or is it just scheduling?
Just scheduling. I actually think that one might be tomorrow. I was I was kind of like in my head planning this out. Like, man, they might put Oren Burks in a really tough spot if these deals aren't necessarily done. And
Oren, go face the media, buddy.
And Oren Burks gets announced.
Yeah.
But no, I do think Oren Burks is going to get done probably today. It was probably a scheduling thing, getting in town, all of those things. That's usually all it is with stuff like that. Not a huge deal. I would expect it to be done. If not Monday, then Tuesday.
Yeah. Shout out Thomas Cole. Anytime you hype up our egos, you get to go on the screen just for a little bit. Appreciate that. Thomas Cole. What do you think the next steps are in free agency? I think we've talked about this. Guards, pass rush help are the obvious answers here. After trade, that was always open 921's question. Do we think we can get the Bengals to the draft without glaring needs? That is not the Bengals way, if I'm being 100% real with you. The Bengals like to go into the draft with a glaring need. And
always.
So, ideally, could they get there? They could. Unlikely. Is Zach Moss getting cut? Is Jermaine Pratt getting cut? These are examples where for Zach Moss, I think they're waiting for some medical questions to clear up. Jermaine Pratt, I still would expect him to move, but
oh yeah, Jermaine's gone.
He's still on the team until they have a replacement. So
Jake Liscow has a better chance of being a Bengal in 25 than Jermaine.
Yikes. When do we think the press conferences will be? Tracy Bart's question here. Monday, Tuesday?
It could be Monday. Like
it could be. It will be this week, almost certainly, right?
For sure, this week. I would say Monday or Tuesday. I really haven't gotten anything to know. I would not be shocked if early tomorrow morning, like they could be working on the travel schedule right now.
Yeah.
And like,
they could be in Cincinnati. Who knows?
Tee and Jamar are flying in early on Monday morning and stuff. Like it could be Monday afternoon. Like would not shock me at all if that's the case. But I do think that they will be joint. Speculating, I don't know for sure. And if it's not Monday, I would expect it to be Tuesday. Because the other part of this, they do want to get these finalized from a cap perspective too. Like completely
official, shipped off to the league, get the cap hits changed on the books, because until the name is on the line and the fax machine is used, the infamous fax machine, the cap number isn't updated in the NFL's cap ledger. You waiting for me?
Yeah. I'm just looking at some of these chats just to see.
Kevin Zeitler and Tevin Jenkins still possible? No, because Kevin Zeitler has signed, and Tevin Jenkins looks destined to land elsewhere. No news on a Jenkins visit to Cincinnati, for those of you asking. No real news on Jenkins really since the first time we heard about his name, other than apparently they remain open to it. They haven't ruled it out, but the visit to Seattle is not great for his prospects of landing in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I hope he just blinks and takes whatever offer the Bengals make. Like, you want to block for Joe Burrow or Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
Anyways,
hopefully.
Would you have offered Kevin Zeitler 2 years? I would have.
I don't know, man.
I'm just curious. I would have.
I don't have an answer ready for that.
Yeah, he got 1 for 9, and I would offer Brandon Scherf. Like, I have something written going up tomorrow. Today in like 7 hours. I would offer Scherf 2 years. Like, I would do
second year on any of those deals is probably funny money anyway, to be totally honest with you. So sure, why not?
There we go. Funny money.
Funny money. Let's see. Is there anything else here that we would like to hit before we get out of here so I can eat my dinner?
Yeah, we're gonna go just a few more minutes here. We did do a show this afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and we did talk about the receivers at the beginning, and it's getting done, all of those things. But then we did get into Trey. A lot of that holds up, and then we did get into free agents as well. So if you're up, you're wired, you need your Bengals fix, you can do that, because we did get into some free agents that we'd consider as well.
Yeah, I think it is very noteworthy that Tom Pelissero's tweet included Trey Hendrickson's name as the next priority for the Bengals. Pelissero, certainly one of the more plugged in with the Bengals front office side of things, where a lot of the information we're getting today is coming from the team. And I think coming from the agent. And I think pretty much all of the what we've heard so far is coming from the agent side of things. Pelissero certainly plugged in with the team, and Trey's agent, to be honest, if they have shifted their priorities and started thinking more about Trey Hendrickson. So the big next steps are, let's see what happens to cap space here. Because if those cap hits go down significantly, we'll know for sure that they have more plans for this year. Because there are a lot of teams out there with a ton of cap space left, to be totally honest with you, and to acknowledge what's happening in the rest of the league. The Patriots still have like $100 million in cap space, which is crazy. I have no idea what the Patriots are doing. So we'll see what happens there, and that will tell us a lot about what the rest of their plans are.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully they are willing to be aggressive, continuing to be aggressive. They did this and got these deals done to create more cap space to give to Trey, and then they can use the rest of their cap space because they still have it on pieces to win now. These are win now moves, Bengals. Think about 2025 and wanting to win now. That win now mentality. The word of the offseason for me, at least for the draft and free agency, is more, specifically free agency. More. I always want more. Well, on a night, an historic night, huge news for the Bengals. Of course, you want those guards and that pass rush to get boosted. So hopefully that's where their focus goes.
Yep. Let's wrap up there. We'll see what happens with the financial terms. We'll see what happens if this unstops the dam and gets things moving for the Bengals with some other deals. Trey Hendrickson, external free agents, the works. We'll see what happens with Oren Burks. Apparently, we're worried about Oren Burks as well.
He's fine.
And,
thanks for watching, everyone. You guys are the best.
Until you hear from us next time, really appreciate everybody for hanging out the first time we did this live. That was a good time. And we'll talk to you next time here on Locked On Bengals.